In this lecture, we're going to install VirtualBox Guest Editions. We're going to set up the computer's network configuration and make sure it can reach the internet as well as communicate with our host computer. And finally, we will change the computer name. Now obviously make sure the virtual machine is powered on. If the VM is not already powered on, right-click on the VM and choose Start, Normal Start. Once the VM is powered on, press right Control and Delete and enter your login credentials that we created earlier. Wait for the server to fully load, and then at the top of the VM window, select Devices and insert Guest Edition CD image. Notice that I have not gone into full screen mode yet. Open File Explorer by clicking on the folder icon on the taskbar. Select this PC on the left-hand side of the File Explorer. Under Devices and Drives, you should see the VirtualBox Guest Edition CD. Double-click on this CD to launch the installation. Once the welcome screen appears, click next to the prompts and select Install. During the installation process, you will be asked to install device software. Check the Always Trust Software from Oracle Corporation checkbox and click the Install button. Once the installation is complete, you will be required to reboot the server. Choose the Finish button and wait for the server to complete its reboot. Once the computer reboots, log back into your desktop and wait for Windows to fully load. If you would like, press right Control and F to enter full screen mode. Once Windows is fully loaded, we need to open Server Manager and Command Prompt. To do this, click on the Windows button in the bottom left hand and choose the Server Manager button. I recommend that you right-click on this button and choose More, Pin to Taskbar, as you will be using it quite often and this makes it much easier to reach. I also recommend that you pin Command Prompt to the taskbar. You may find Command Prompt by pressing the Windows key and typing in the letters CMD. Right-click on Command Prompt and choose Pin to Taskbar. Now we're going to set up our network connection for a host-only network. If you're running a physical server or your particular environment doesn't use VirtualBox or a host-only network, you can skip this step. However, if you're using VirtualBox and you created the host-only network, continue on with these steps. In Command Prompt, we're going to enter the ipconfig command. That is ipconfig. This command will list our computer's networking adapters and configurations. We're looking for your two Ethernet adapters, 1 and 2. If you do not see the same network settings, it is likely you do not have the exact same network settings that I have on my guest VM. Notice that the first adapter has an IP address of 10.0.2.15. I have assigned adapter 1 on my VM to be a NAT adapter, and this is the IP address that is automatically configured for the VM. Let's verify that our VM has access to the internet by running a ping command. The ping command sends out a request to a specific IP address or host name and expects an answer. If we try to ping something on the internet and we're able to reach the internet server and we're able to get a response from the internet server, this means that we're connected to the internet. Let's ping google.com and see if we get a response from the internet web server. Type in the command ping space google.com and we can see that we are getting a reply from google.com. This tells me that I am connected to the internet. Now what we need to do is get our second host-only network adapter to work. Now we can see the IP address of the second adapter is a 169.254 address. This means that the computer itself was unable to find a DHCP server on our network and instead assigned a private IP address to itself. We need to configure an IP address that is on the same network as the host-only network that we created in previous lessons. To do this, we need to exit the full screen window of the VM and open File, Preferences on the VirtualBox window. Navigate to the Network tab and select Host Only Networks. Select your host-only network and click the Edit Selected button. Notice if you navigate to the DHCP Server tab, it is turned off. This is why our VM got a 169.254 IP address. Do not turn this back on, however, as we will be creating our own DHCP server on this VM at a later lecture. We need to give our VM's second networking adapter an IP address in the range of 192.168.0.2 through 254. Navigate back to your guest VM and open the Server Manager window. Choose the Local Server tab and edit the settings for Ethernet 2. You do this by selecting the blue font to the right of the Ethernet 2 label. Next, right-click on the Ethernet 2 adapter and choose Properties. Uncheck the Internet Protocol version 6 checkbox, as we will not be using this in this course. Select Internet Protocol version 4 and choose Properties. Check the Use the following IP address checkbox, and for IP address, use the IP of 192.168.0.10. Now, each group of this IP address is what's referred to as an octet. The first octet is 192, the second octet would be 168, third octet is 0, and the fourth octet is 10. For the fourth octet, we could use any address between 2 and 254. The reason why we can't use .1 is that is our network gateway, and 255 is our broadcast address. So the important thing to remember is that neither of these IP addresses are available for use. I'm going to choose .10 because this is just easy for me to remember. I recommend that you do the same just to avoid any confusion later on in the course. Now if you press the tab key or go down to the subnet mask, this information will be 255.255.255.0. We're using this subnet mask because we don't have any requirement for subnetworks. It would be easy just to make a whole course to help you understand subnetting, but that's not the purpose of our course, and a lot of times this information is automatically input for you. So we're just going to leave it as putting in the required information, and we'll move on to the default gateway. The default gateway will be the same IP address as our host-only network, 192.168.0.1. Now, for the preferred DNS server, I'm going to type in what's called a loopback IP address. Basically, this IP address points to the virtual machine or the computer itself. The loopback IP address is 127.0.0.1. We can leave the alternate DNS server blank, or if you want, you can enter Google's DNS server, which is 8.8.8 and .8. The loopback IP address of 127.0.0.1 is pretty important for system administrators to know, so make sure you know this address. Now we're pointing the DNS server back to our local server, even though we haven't created a DNS server yet. That's okay because we'll be doing this in a future lecture. Select OK and close out of the Properties window. Now before we can communicate between our other VMs and our host, we need to modify the firewall settings of our local server. Go back to the Server Manager window, and under Local Server, select Windows Firewall. Choose the Advanced Settings on the left-hand side of the screen and click Windows Firewall Properties. We need to customize the protected network connections for domain, private, and public profiles. Choose the Customize button for protected network connections and uncheck your host-only network, which in my case is Ethernet 2. Select OK and repeat these steps for private and public profiles. This will allow traffic on our host-only network to pass through our network adapter without being blocked or rejected. Now we need to verify that we can communicate with our host computer and our guest VM. To do this, we're going to attempt to ping our guest VM from our host computer. If you're in full screen, exit full screen mode by pressing right Control and F. On your host computer, open Command Prompt. Attempt to ping the VM by typing in the ping command followed by the IP address of the server that we just configured. In my case, if you remember, we set it to 192.168.0.10. Here we can see that I can successfully ping the guest VM. Now we have a VM server that can reach the internet as well as communicate with other VMs and the host computer. Now the last thing that we're going to do is rename the server. Go back to the VM and if you'd like, open full screen mode. By default, the server will be named with a WIN prefix, which isn't very easy to remember. To change this, open Server Manager and navigate to the local server. Click the computer name to open the system properties. Select Change and enter a new name. I'm going to type in the name ITF-DC01. ITF stands for my website name, ITFlea, and DC stands for Domain Controller. The 01 simply means that this is the first domain controller on this network. Click OK, and click OK again when you are notified that you must restart. Select Close on the system properties and choose Restart Now when the window appears. Now we are done making the basic Windows configurations. We've installed the VirtualBox Guest Edition CD. We've pinned Server Manager and Command Prompt to our taskbar. We've turned off IP version 6 and configured our IP version 4 network settings. We've opened our firewall to allow traffic to pass on our host-only networking adapter. And finally, we renamed the server. Now that was a lot of work and you stuck it out and got it done. Great job for doing that, and I will see you in the next lecture.